Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Free to Play Guy here, and today I want to talk about the top 10 best biometric selector characters. But before we start, I have a confession to make.
This is actually my real voice, and I didn't want to tell you guys this. I didn't want to show off or kind of reveal this voice because I was worried that you guys, my free-to-play brothers and sisters, would be would be in shock and wouldn't believe me and would think that I'm just Cynicalex because I sound just like him. So I wanted to share this with you guys because I hated lying to you, but I hope you can understand that I'm still free-to-play guy. He's still in there. It's just that doing that voice in order to more closely identify with the free-to-play players just wasn't really working for me. It was destroying my vocal cords, and this is my real voice, and I want to show you my true self. So I know that I might look and sound exactly like Cynicalex, but rest assured,
I'm still free-to-play guy.
Okay, so here we go. It's the top 10 best biometric selector characters. For this list, just to keep in mind, we're only selecting characters who are only available from biometric selectors. So even though Human Torch is on this list, he's not going to be available. He's on the biometric selector list, but he won't be on this list because, well, he was on the energy farming list, and you can farm him using energy. So you're going to see quite a few characters on here that you may think are better than some of the characters I'm going to mention, like, let's say, I don't know, Loki, or Thor with his new uniform, or Captain America with his new uniform, or Winter Soldier, and they're technically biometric selector characters, but they're not biometric selector only characters. So that's what we are going for here. We are going for characters who are, only available through biometric selectors. And of course, how do you get biometric selectors? Well, you get them from logging in as check-in rewards. They're given away quite frequently, not only from the regular monthly check-in, we get 2 per month, but you also get a lot of them from the additional check-ins that they do just randomly after big movies, and we're definitely going to have another one for we just finished one for Captain Marvel. We're definitely going to have one for Endgame in a couple of months. You also get the primary method of farming biometric selectors, because you can farm them, is twofold. First, you have your Shadowland levels, and this is why we emphasize so much to newer players. You have to get to Shadowland Stage 15 ASAP, because 5, 10, and 15 will unlock biometric selectors for you in the version of 60, 75, and 90. So you're able to farm 225 biometric selectors per week. You can also farm additional biometric selectors by donating the full amount to your alliance, which is 1 million gold every day. You'll accumulate 100 tokens, and then you can go into the store and you can purchase either the 20 selector for 110 or the 50 selector for 210. Now, you can't actually farm these every single day because, well, you only get 100 tokens and you need 110 minimum, but you can save up and use them for a rainy day. Also, keep in mind that when you purchase it, it will show you that page where it says, hey, you have to select a character. This page right here, it'll show you this page. If you just press the X, it will store the biometric selector in your inventory with a 6-day expiry, so you can save it up if a new update is just around the corner in a couple of days, or 1 day before the update goes live. You can go and purchase those, and you'll have an extra 70 biometrics that you can use because it's a once per day purchase, so you can save up a couple of days in advance, because I believe they expire in 6 days. I might be wrong about that, but I believe so. Anyways, moving on to the actual list. Now that we know what characters we're going to be targeting, now that we know which characters are excluded and how to get biometric selectors, we're going to talk about the top 10. And the top 10 starts off with a villain, and his name is Ulysses Claw. Now, yes, Ulysses Claw and a couple of other characters on this list are also obtainable randomly from the legendary battles, but again, this is not an efficient way of farming them. I mean, you could get 5 Ulysses Claw bios today and then none for the next 2 weeks, so it's definitely not possible to consistently farm this character in a timely manner. I'm talking a couple of months, a few months, because that's about as long as it takes to farm any character in this game, like Clea and those super ultra rare characters. So here we go. Ulysses Claw, number 10. He's on this list because he's a solid character. He's, there's a small possibility that he'll get a uniform, but he's a good villain, and he's got passives that apply to the team when you get him to tier 2, so he's got some support buffs as well. And because he's a villain and he's a blast type, he's very flexible for Shadowland. Beyond Shadowland, he doesn't do a lot of other content super well, but he's a great character to get if you need to do that specifically, and he's a nice utility character that you can use later on. He also fills out the blast villain day until you get someone like Strife or Magneto, and even then he can help Magneto, and he is on my Magneto team to max out his critical damage, so he will basically forever serve a role in my roster as long as that day of ABX is around, because that way I don't have to cap my crit damage. I can build Magneto up to 170%, and then the rest of it gets covered by Ulysses for that particular day. Moving on to number 9, I kind of flip-flop between number 9 and number 10, so if you think number 9 is worse than number 10, I'm kind of there with you, but I'm like 60-40. I think Robbie Reyes is a solid number 9. He could get a uniform, but he may also never get a uniform. It's kind of weird with the Ghost Riders being different people and having different like characters for each one, rather than like Captain America, for example, where we've seen multiple iterations of the character, but they're all just uniforms for Captain America. They aren't additional Captain Americas. Same thing with Black Widow and stuff like that. So I don't really know, and so that kind of reduces his potential, but he's still quite good of a character. Even at tier 1, he doesn't need his tier 2 to shine, although his damage is always going to be low. He can still do some work at tier 1 because of his damage in addition to his iframes. It's really the iframe chain on 5, 4, and 3 that you can just loop over and over again to kill low-level bosses and low-level Shadowland stages pretty easily, as long as they don't run away too much from you. And also Robbie is nice because you can build him up and you can easily scale his damage with a lot of fire. So if you have like a double fire damage obelisk proc, you will see quite a large jump in his damage. If you give him a fire leadership like Satana or Red Hulk, you'll see even more. But his low damage in the wider scope of the game is really what holds him back from doing any sort of more competitive content. But he is a universal type, which makes him better for Shadowland than most characters. Coming in at number 8, we have Titania, and I've spoken a lot about Titania's value in this game, and it's still there. She is a great way to buff Minerva, who is also on this list, so that proves she immediately has leadership / support potential. On top of that, she's kind of like a mini Sharon Rogers. She's got 5 seconds of immunity with accumulation, and she buffs her damage up to 40%, which is, you know, a fraction of Sharon Rogers' 225%, but it's still a percentage above 10%, and you can do a really easy combo with max skill cooldown where you just do 3 and then 4 for the buff, and then with 1 second left on your immunity you do 5, and then that 5 iframe leads right back into 3. So she's got a really smooth rotation. You can also do 3 cancel, or 3 cancel 4 1 2 5 if you can stretch all of those skills out, and with her self buffs as well, it makes her a lot more flexible to build, so you can go max attack speed or not, and she still kind of functions either way. So she's a solid villain. She could definitely get a uniform in the future. She's been featured enough in the comics, and she's got that rare female combat villain tag, which before Minerva, she was probably one of the best. So just keep that in mind. Moving on to number 7. I got lost there. Number 7, we have Medusa. And Medusa was recently replaced for the Universal Female Hero by Captain Marvel, but she's still worthwhile. And she's got higher potential than a lot of characters on this list because she gets better with her uniform, quite a bit better. But she's also just got a lot of stats. She's got a lot of stats on her character passive and build that just make her very easy for any sort of player to build. So we've got the leadership, which is either 36 or 42% all attack, which is solid. On top of that, she's got 30% ignore defense on her 4th skill, which is something that I think a lot of you guys have trouble capping because your cards are so bad. So that also helps in that case. She's also got 7% all speed, so it helps cap her attack speed. She's got her own immunity with crit rate, and then on her Inhuman Queen passive, she's got additional buffs to guaranteed dodge and guaranteed crit rate. So she's got a lot of self buffs that make her just an easy character to build in different ways, whether you want to go offensively or defensively. And she's honestly a pretty solid character, mostly for Shadowland, but she also fills a leadership role. And she has a lot more potential, like I said, with her uniform to be a solid character individually with iframes, damage, AoE, and immunity. Moving on to number 6, we have one of the new characters introduced with the Captain Marvel update, and that is Korath. And I've already explained what makes Korath so good, so I shouldn't need to say much here. but he's a great villain, and he's a speed type, so he fills in two kind of niche roles. Now, speed types are not as useful as blast types or universal types for Shadowland. In terms of my ranking for Shadowland usefulness, I would probably go universal first, then blast, then speed, then combat, but he's not at the bottom, and he's a villain, which is a super awesome tag. Because he's got all these self buffs, it also makes him pretty easy to build. You know, he's got super armor, all defense, guaranteed dodge, guaranteed crit, and then his third skill gives him a bunch of extra buffs. He's got iframes, stuns, so he's quite useful for ABX to hit 100,000 pretty easily, for Shadowland, and even for some world boss ultimate, even something like Corvus. And like a lot of other characters on this list, he does have the potential to get a uniform that changes his appearance. He's got quite a few different looks that can be chosen from, and while he has the MCU one right now, we can definitely go for a comics one later on down the road. They could do the Hyperion thing and give him kind of this classic look. There's a lot of ways they can do this. Moving on to the top 5 best biometric selector characters, we have Iron Hammer. As soon as I find him, I actually kind of wanted to put Iron Hammer higher up on the list, but he just doesn't do enough damage compared to some of these other characters. But his overall kit is very strong. You've got lightning damage, which is easy to stack with Lincoln's leadership, but also just with a straight up obelisk. He's got super armor, he's got iframes, he's got a self heal on number 3, which is so great. He's immune to lightning damage, so he has some kind of counterplay in certain timeline battle or alliance conquest game modes. I mean, he would completely destroy Storm, for example. And so, yeah, he's just a pretty good character all around, and he's got a very noob-friendly leadership with the cooldown, energy attack, lightning damage. Very, very good. Probably the best leadership in the game for new players. And, of course, he's got the coveted universal tag, which makes him super awesome for Shadowland and decent enough. We've covered all the way up to stage 10 Thanos, World Boss Ultimate, which is pretty impressive. Coming in at number 4 is another character who's going to be invaluable to your roster basically forever. And as soon as I find her, I will tell you that it is Cherie. Where the hell is Cherie? There she is. Whether or not you have her uniform, she's still an excellent character. She's good at tier 1 on her own, but it's really at tier 2 where she shines because of Panther God's protection, and she gets that insane buff that she can pass on to teammates that make them just fantastic. But even without her tier 2, I mean, even without the support stuff, just considering her as a standalone character, she's good. Her leadership isn't, but that's basically all. She's got a long iframe on 4. Her 5th skill gives her 7 seconds of immunity, which is insane. She's got a good passive for ignore dodge, which is useful for both Corvus and some PvP. She's got really good self buffs. She decreases all damage received by 70%. If you manually play as Cherie, let me tell you this right now. If you manually play as Cherie and you fight against Strife or any other blast villain in timeline battle, they will do 1 damage to you. Any blast villain, Magneto, Ulysses Claw, actually not Magneto. Magneto has a buff against humans, so actually Magneto might kill you. But Strife and others who don't have that buff, pretty much any other blast villain will do hilariously little damage to you. And villains in general. So she is a very strong character. She's quite underrated as a character because of how good Panther God's protection is. But even without her uniform, her skills look super cool with all of the crows and the kind of sand thing that happens. So petrification, it's awesome. So I do really think she's an underrated character, and she absolutely deserves to be on this list at number 4. At number 3, we've got Morgan Le Fay, big-time villain, universal type. Taught Dr. Doom a lot of his magic, and it shows. She's got a channeling 4th skill with crazy buffs. The all defense doesn't seem to do what it says it's going to do, but it's still there technically. She's got a nice cancel with 5 and 4. She's got summons. She's got mind control, guard hit. She's got a heal. She revives, by the way, just like Dr. Doom. Very, very strong character. She even has some cooldown reset like Luna Snow. And it's definitely possible that she gets a uniform to make her even stronger. And she kind of deserves it because she has a very strong kit, but right now it's more PvP centered because there's just not enough damage on meteor range. She kind of hits like a little baby. So we're looking forward to that in the future. Moving on to the top 2 picks. Number 2, you could probably guess who it is by now. There's only 2 characters left that could be here. We got Minerva. Now Minerva absolutely needs her uniform to get to that kind of upper echelon potential. Without her uniform, she may not be better than Morgan Le Fay. She may be like number 3 or number 4 on this list, but with her uniform, it's undoubtedly true that she is the second best and very close to number 1 for the biometric selector characters, especially if you're thinking tier 1 only or even tier 2 only. She's very, very strong. She's got so many self buffs. She's got insane damage with penetration and all defense down stacks. She's got crazy AoE on Kree Armada, dodge, guaranteed crit, or no, not guaranteed crit, guaranteed dodge, and decreased damage received. She's just a very, very strong character. She's got a summon. Yeah, just all around very, very powerful character. And then number 1, you can probably guess who it is. Of course, Sharon Rogers. Now, without her uniform, she's definitely not number 1, so please keep that in mind. Morgan is probably better with no uniform than Sharon Rogers, but pretty much everybody gets Sharon Rogers and everybody gets her uniform, so it's just assumed that you are getting her uniform. But I just want to make that clear. If we're talking no uniforms, Morgan's probably better than Sharon Rogers. She's got a lot more tools than Sharon Rogers has. The only thing that Sharon Rogers has at that point is the immunity plus the damage buff, but she loses a lot of her other tricks that she gets with this uniform. But this uniform is insane. And yeah, of course, maybe a tier 3 Sharon Rogers with no uniform is better than Luna Snow, but if you're talking, not Luna Snow, Morgan Le Fay, but if you're talking tier 2, I don't think it's a question. But we are talking maximum potential, so in terms of maximum potential, yes, Sharon Rogers is undoubtedly the best biometric selector character. Biometrics don't matter once you get a character to level 60 tier 2 because it's just random bios from there to get them to level 70, and you don't need any more bios to get them to tier 3, but still, she just brings everything to the table. I don't really need to, and I don't want to recap what she does, because if you don't know by now, then you just don't know, my dude. She's a boss. She's a queen. She's level 100 Mafia boss, and that's how it works. So let me know what you guys think of the top 10 biometric selectors character list. If there are any other lists that you're kind of fiending for that you want me to do, let me know down below in the comments. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.